Santi, thanks for coming.
My pleasure.
Thank
Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we can't be at a surgical robotics-centric conference without, getting time with you. You've been involved in some of the most progressive platforms. You've evaluated most of them. And going into 2024 and 2025, would it be fair to say the next 24 months may be more happenings in surgical robotics in the previous 10 years if you took one of the players out, Intuitive?
Absolutely. We are seeing now the birth of many systems, not in the US yet, because of issues with cost, et cetera, of FDA trials, but we are seeing that in Europe. There are now 4 systems with CE mark. And they are going to come and they are going to lower costs, and I think that the surgical world is going to change because of that.
And so that's an interesting point, because the cost, if you got like SSI coming out of India, where they can make a robot that is close enough to an Intuitive that, might be 1/10 the cost of making it here in the US. And so that's going to impact how things happen and where robots are made moving forward.
Absolutely. When I bought robot number 4 in 2000, and we paid $750,000. And the robots are now 3 times that price. It didn't go down. The expectation with technology is as times evolve, technology gets cheaper, not more expensive. The reason why Intuitive has minimal impact outside of the US compared to the US is because of cost. In Latin America, you cannot pay $2.5 million for a robot in Tijuana. How do you get the money back? So when you look at the robots out of India, China, and some of the systems in Europe, they have not spent more than $150 million to develop. The ones in China, 50 million, 25 million. And I have tried them. And let me tell you, for that money, they perform pretty well. So I think that will allow robotic surgery to be used much more broadly compared to what it is today. Because as an innovator, 24 years doing robotic surgery, I'm happy to see that now it can be used more widely. Because for many years, it was only American surgeons using it and some European surgeons. And that needs to change if we want to impact patient care.
What do you think that'll do to the US market, though? Because if it costs me on average to pay an engineer $200,000 plus LTIs plus, and I can do the same in Europe with some of our clients on the robotic side, less than half.
Yeah.
And you compound that by the 200 engineers you need, give or take, to put out a surgical robot. Do you think that OUS robots will hesitate coming to the US because the clinical trials and the costs there? Or do you think eventually they'll weigh it and say, we've got a robot, it works, I got CE mark, I've got 2,000 cases under my belt, let's go to the US? Because launching a robot in the US is probably expensive as hell too.
Yes, I think that the two things are going to happen, right? And let's look at the iPhone. The iPhone is developed and engineered in the US, but it's built in China, Taiwan, et cetera, not in the US. And with robotic surgery, that's going to happen, because the cost of building a robot here compared to what it is outside of the US is much more expensive. And if we want to really impact patient care, we need to have more robots available. We have 40 ORs at UC Santiago, and we have 9 robots only. Why we don't have 35 robots? Why are we still fighting for robotic time? Well, because they're expensive. Because we do have 42 video towers. And we do have 30 C-arms. And we do have 20 microscopes, but we only have 9 robots for 3 hospitals. And that's a problem because of cost. Not the operational cost, but yes, the purchase cost. In terms of the outside of the US robots coming into the US, I think that now that it seems that the FDA is allowing outside clinical data to be used for the application for approval, that may allow outside companies to really be willing to come into the US. But again, the biggest problem is not coming into the US is the sales force you need to develop to position the robots, which is not cheap.
400,000 a salesperson.
There you go. So if you are Medtronics, Stryker, Stores, J&J, who already have a sales force, all they need to do is to add one more product to the sales force. For a company from outside of the US to develop a sales force in every state, it's going to be an expensive process. And it's much cheaper in America, in Latin America, in Asia. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think that we are seeing that with the salaries going up, the sales force becoming so expensive, it's going to limit the sales of these devices.
What impact is the growth of ambulatory surgical centers having in regards to technology development, and maybe in particular the soft tissue robotic space? Do you see that being an accelerant into the use of robots, and then maybe a simplification of them in the lower acuity cases in some form factors?
Yeah, you brought that up during the conference today, right? And I think that what we are seeing, why the growth of ASC, well, because sports medicine and inguinal hernia surgery and outpatient surgery, it needs to be pushed out of the hospitals. We are full. We don't have enough beds for the daily patients to be operated in the hospitals. So that was the push, is to say, okay, what operations can be done in the ASC? Hernias is one of them. But with hernias, we are seeing today that the growth in robotic surgery is in hernias, inguinal hernias or ventral hernias. And those are outpatient. So there is going to be huge growth, as you have seen the trend in the last 4 or 5 years of ASCs, not only for sports medicine, but also for hysterectomies, maybe prostatectomies, surgery that can be going home the same day. And for that, you need robots. We at UCSD now, we have 2 robots in the ASC. And we are pushing as many hernias as we can to ASCs that we didn't do that before.
But that robot you have in the ASC, is it an overkill for the procedure?
No, because the procedure is being done open. Inguinal hernias are operations that most of the times in the US were done open. Mm-hmm. The conversion of inguinal hernias from open to laparoscopy was very minimal, 25% only, 23% in Germany. It's a problem with the technique that you need to develop to do it. And surgeons bail out and they end up doing open operations. The robot is allowing those operations to be done laparoscopically, robotically, minimally invasively. So I do believe that that's going to push many more outpatient surgeries into the ASCs. And we do around 2 million hernias a year in the US, so most of them are outpatient. So you start pushing them out, you will need to have a bigger growth because the cost of an ASC is way lower than the cost of a hospital. And in the new model in the US where we are buying per procedure, the robots are much more affordable.
Do you see a stratification of the complexity of the robots occurring? We're starting to see it now. So right, we have intuitive, and then we move down to, let's call it a distal motion for now.
Correct.
And then we move down to a moon, right? And again, wristed, non-wristed, but still, there's still a computer in between the surgeon and the patient, for argument's sake. Do you see that as an expanding market where we will have highly complex for high acuity, mid acuity, low acuity?
Absolutely. We don't need a Ferrari to do a gallbladder. Let's keep the Ferrari for Ferrari surgeries. Let's have a lower cost, lower technological perfect robot for the bread and butter surgeries. Distal motion is a perfect example of that, right? It performs really well. I have no conflict for the record, but I have seen it enough to see why can this robot be used for every inguinal hernia at 1/3 of the price of intuitive robot. And then you keep the other robot for myesophageectomy, kidney donuts, etc. I always say we don't use a Ferrari to go to the supermarket most of the times. People use the other car to go to the supermarket and the Ferrari to have fun and enjoy. So we have only one robot for 24 years. Now we're going to have many more robots. The new trend that I see is cheaper robots for the bread and butter surgeries with no stapling technology, with not advanced energy. But most of the operations I do not need stapling and don't need a lot of advanced energy. An inguinal hernia doesn't, a gallbladder doesn't, a sleeve gastrectomy, yes, but that's not the majority. Foregut surgery, most of the times you may need one stapler that you can use an accessory port for that. So I think that we will see a cheaper set of robots, not inferior in quality, but inferior in design, with less features, with less complex robots that we can use for everyday surgeries. Yeah. And that will impact worldwide healthcare.
Yeah. And then finally, I'm curious because I've met so many younger surgeons who point to you and say you were incredibly impactful with your style of surgery, right? There's a Sante style to it, and we had one in studio recently, and she was very, very, very complimentary of it. And having said that, what are you thinking of the emerging surgical roboticists in the market today? And do you have concerns? Do you have ideas about where that's going? Are we going to be graduating enough of them?
I think we will. I think that we will not have a decrease. I think that the market needs them, but we need help to make sure that we don't crash in the process.
What kind of help?
Economical help. Yeah. We need funding, a lot.
Funding for the programs, funding for the robots, funding to train them? Has it become cost prohibitive to mint a surgeon?
All of the above. We are very lucky that at UC San Diego I have 3 robots in the lab, in the Center for the Future of Surgery, and I have grants from industry to support residents training in the lab. But we don't have that everywhere. So I think that if industry wants much more training in robotic surgery and for us to be able to deliver surgeons that are ready for them, they will need to invest in training. Otherwise, we are going to have a less quality of surgeons that are not trained in all the technologies because we don't have access to that. How many training centers are in the country, like the Center for the Future of Surgery? There are 3 or 4, maybe 2. And how many of residents get training outside of the OR every week? My dad was a surgeon, and the see one, do one, teach one doesn't apply anymore with these technologies. So to learn robotic surgery, you need to be very proficient before you go to the patient, with the simulators, etc. Industry cannot expect a hospital to buy 3 simulators to train the surgeon to use the robot. I think that needs to be part of the package. We need to help the medical system in the US, unless we want this to be an impossible system because of the cost.
So as 2024 gets underway, what are you going to be watching for the next 12 months, let's call it?
I'm looking very closely to see what happened with the new robots in Europe doing their clinical trials. We have the new robot coming out from Intuitive in April, May. We'll see where that goes. I think that for the US, it's going to be a flat year in terms of new robots. And we will see, hopefully, Ottawa robot coming out to do clinical trials and Hugo starting also. But in terms of impacting patient care every day, I think that we'll see much more in Europe. And that, as a surgeon that came from Argentina to the US 30 years ago, it saddens me. Because when I came to this country, the best technology was in this country. People would come from outside of the US to the meetings to see the new laparoscopic technologies and what was new and what was happening and what was being developed. Today, we have to go to Europe to see how the robots are performing. It has been a mind change. So, hopefully that will change, but I don't see, I'm not very optimistic about it.
One follow-up question to that. Is that a combination of FDA and financing?
Yes. Clearly, people are scared of the FDA. And to be fair, the FDA is making things more difficult because now they are applying a standard to approving new devices that are very different from before. The FDA should not be controlling indications of a device in terms of medical care. They should be controlling safety of a device. For them to be saying that you have to apply per disease approval, it's kind of tough. Because before, a stapler was not approved for right colon, left colon, stomach, pancreas. It was approved for stapling tissue. And the robots should be approved for handling tissue. And then it's up to the surgeon to decide if the operations and societies and publications and experience, if it's better or not. But for the FDA to say, what are you applying for? Bypass? Oh, but you cannot do a sleeve gastrectomy. Why not? It's the same operation. I mean, same technique, a little bit more, but. I think that needs to change. I said that today in the meeting. I push all the CEOs and industry to go and together and say, this needs to stop. As an example, the Nissen fund duplication and the robot was approved for a hiatal hernia, but not for a paraesophageal hernia. And it's the same hernia, but bigger. So same technique. So that needs to change. Or we are going to have a hard time, or we have to do everything off-label, like we're doing today. Most of the robotic operations are done off-label. Because the FDA is approving diseases, not performance and safety.
Well, hopefully that changes, because it will be a major barrier to these new platforms coming in.
It's a major barrier.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, my friend, thank you for your time today, as always. You're generous and insightful on where things are going.
A pleasure. Thank you so much for doing this. I really enjoy chatting with you and looking at what the future is going to bring.
Thank you, my friend.
Take care.
I'm Joe Mullings from SDTS, the next big thing in Houston. Be well.